All right, so go ahead and mute your microphones. And we are live streaming. Today is Tuesday, December 7th. It is 10:01 a.m. Oh, what is that? Yep, okay, we're good. And, welcome to another Tuesday Talks. I'm Christina Dillabo. I'm the Director of Communications for the Desert Southwest Conference. This weekly meeting covers some of the items that I try to bring up to your attention, that these are, all of our news is super important, right? But there's a few things that are sometimes really time sensitive or might get buried in the fold or in the super long newsletter, which is actually getting published today. I said last week that it was getting published last week. I was mixed up because it was my first day back from vacation, but now I'm back on track. I get what today is, and today is the newsletter publishing day. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order in the items that I was going to talk to you guys about. I was first going to mention the Communications Liaison versus Church Communicator, but real quick, I'm going to first talk about the BSA Bankruptcy update article. So last week I said that Matt Ashley was going to be writing an article and sending that, and that I was going to include it in the newsletter later that day. Well, since then, I think it was actually later that day that the United Methodist Church had published a press release and sent it to the communicators via email. So we published that, but our Desert Southwest Conference, the team that's kind of working on the BSA information, part of it is the district superintendents, but there's others. They reviewed the press release. There were some questions in there, and so we didn't want to just publish something that would leave questions, because the idea would be that this press release from the denomination was going to be what we send to you guys, and Matt actually didn't need to write anything because the general church already explained it all via this press release. Since there were questions, what we did instead is we still published the press release. Let me get to my, let's see here. Nope, not that one. See, I went out of order and that's why I can't find it now. We still published the press release, there it is, but we also published this article, which, excuse me, which was written by Sam Hodges for United Methodist News Service. The press release is linked here in this big green button and also here. This is the one that they sent for you guys to use, but if you read through this, you'll see there's a lot more like background information. There's links to other articles that explain more. So, and of course you're not going to publish this whole article in your news, but what I'm hoping you guys will do is take the time to read through this one carefully, take a look at those other links, and that way when you are ready to publish the press release, because maybe this is the one thing that you're going to send out. If you're going to, I'm not trying to tell you guys how to do your job. Maybe it doesn't make sense at your church to publish this, but if your church is having to host a special session because you hosted a Boy Scout troop in the past, you're a charter member currently, or are involved in this whole bankruptcy deal, people are going to want more information. And so now you've got a couple really good resources that you can refer them to. Instead of publishing the whole entire thing in your newsletter, if it's too much, if you've got too many other things going on, I encourage you to just write like a short paragraph that maybe links to both of them. With the title and a link to this article, as with something about if your church, if you're wanting to find out more information about the BSA bankruptcy plan, or why churches are being advised to vote no, click here to find out more, something along those lines. And the following is a press release that was provided by the United Methodist Church about the BSA bankruptcy plan. Something super simple like that. You don't have to go super in depth. So that's all I wanted to share about that. Any questions? Okay. All right, now we'll go back on track. So I am going to switch what I'm sharing. and we're going to talk about the Communications Liaison. And hi Betty, I see you've got, oh, now you do have video. I saw your chat message late, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to show a PDF that I sent this to you guys a while back via email as an attachment about the local church communication liaison. And I think that many times I may have confused some people. I confused myself sometimes because I kept saying local church communicator, but this is different than the local church communicator. It might be at your church that you are the church communicator and have been voted as the church liaison. I think Jim Truscott, that's a situation that happened at his church. And that's okay. But even if, like for Jim, for example, that was the case with him. He's the church communicator. He was voted in as the liaison. I'm sure they reviewed the description really well, so they knew what they're talking about. They figured Jim is the guy because he's already taken care of all the communications. He knows what's coming in. He'll know who it needs to go to. So what I want you guys to think about is, even if you already are voted in as the local church communication liaison, you could be mentoring somebody else to take over for you. Especially if you are the church communicator already, this doesn't need to be another thing that you need to have under your to-do list. If you're already responsible for updating things on the website, you're already responsible for creating the church newsletter, for sending out the congregational emails, managing the social media, any of those things, you're what's considered a local church communicator. The liaison, however, I've stopped here in this area, might do some of those things, but they don't need to do any of it. The liaison would have a background, ideally has a background in communication, so they can help with strategizing. But it doesn't have to be that the liaison is a communications specialist, but the liaison is thinking about this and wanting to put a team together to work on a strategy. Where is it? Here it is. One of the items, no, not that one. It's here somewhere. That the liaison, there it is, plans a communication strategy. So this is not a one-person show. The communication liaison does not need to do this on their own, should not do this on their own. This is a whole team effort. So, we had this survey that went out, and we were asking every church to fill it out, to share it with their congregation and any other people that participate in the church ministries or worship. That survey, the survey results can be shared with your church and could be critical for your communication strategy. The liaison could request and receive a copy of that survey results for your church only, so that they have some data to bring to a team to say, okay, it looks like most of our congregation or our, stakeholders are using Facebook, and pretty regularly, but they don't ever go on Instagram. And our church has been really involved on Instagram. So let's, maybe the strategy could be that let's start thinking about how we could use Instagram to focus at reaching new people that are not connected with our church, and use Facebook to really drive engagement with our church members and give them tools to be able to share information about what's going on in our church, to give them tools to invite friends and family to a Bible study, a small group, whatever, a fundraiser, any of that stuff. So you could use them differently. That's part of what you would do in the strategy. And that's something that the communication liaison would be working on. The church communicator is a vital part of that conversation and is likely the person or persons that are carrying out the tasks from the strategy, but the liaison is the person that's more like tasked to be thinking about how are our communications doing, and be paying attention to, as news comes in from the Desert Southwest Conference, from the district, from their community, how and where should this information go? How will it affect our ministries? How can it help our ministries? How will this help with leadership development? That sort of thing. So they're kind of filtering information, looking for, seeking out, and filtering out, delivering information from various sources over to certain church leadership. And likewise, so you'll see it's like a revolving circle here, or I don't know, kind of a messy circle. They're also getting information from church leaders, different groups, and getting that over to the district, to the conference, to wherever it needs to go, to be able to spread the news and invite other people to participate. So they're not necessarily doing that through social media, maybe, but more likely they're doing this with emails, phone calls. If you're at the church, visiting with someone at the church, talking to their team, maybe attending a church council meeting if that's the way your church works, maybe once in a while coming to a church and society meeting or a missions meeting, UMW, any of that stuff, to better understand what each of the committees and ministries of the church are doing. And because a lot of times if we just, let's say I'm the local church communication liaison, and I am tasked with getting information from those committees and sending them over to other churches, to the conference or whatever. If all I do is email everybody, all the church committee chairs at my church, telling them, hey, do you have any news for me to pass on? Some might respond, but that doesn't really, it just kind of leaves a lot of questions. I think it would have people confused and maybe not seem like it's something that I need to waste my time on right now, because as the UMW chairperson, maybe, I've got enough to manage with my UMW team. I don't have time to deal with whatever the liaison is asking me right now. So the liaison would need to have an actual conversation with these different groups to help explain how their position can support the UMW's ministries, can help them grow and strengthen and filter out through the community, which includes the conference and the districts and so on. Sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes that's not, the end of it. So that's where I'm saying it might be a good idea for the liaison to attend meetings from other committees once in a while. And it doesn't have to be the whole meeting, but just kind of stop by and visit and, hey, I'm the communication liaison. I'm just here to take in what's going on with you guys right now, see if I can pick up any information that needs to be shared with other groups. So does that make sense about what a liaison does versus the church communicator? I see some head nods, maybe. Sherry, you've got something to share?
Betty had a question. Did you see it?
Thanks. You are using the term local church communication liaison and church communicator, but I don't see church communicator on your graph. Okay, thanks, Betty. So this document is only it's the explanation about a local church communication liaison. So that's why you don't see the local church communicator on this. But let's see here, on these other items, these are some of the things that so the local church communicator is probably the one that does the weekly emails, that does the church newsletter, the text through the congregation and all that. So I might need to update this document to help explain that these are church communicator things down here that are happening. But this document, the purpose of this document is to introduce the concept and define what a local church communication liaison is, because this is new. This is what we're like. The big deal here is it's all about building a connection. It's not about just getting your communications out there. It's connecting with the denomination, the district, the conference, and other churches. It's the whole connectional ministries piece of communications, where the church communicator is just getting their stuff done. They're communicating out getting the newsletter done, doing the social media, and that sort of thing. Okay, go ahead, Sherry, and then Betty.
Oh, go ahead, Betty, actually.
Betty, did you have a question?
She types it in the chat.
Oh, you typed it in the chat. My goodness, I got to pay attention to that. All right. At what point does the liaison get information to the communicator? Oh, that's a great question. So Tuesday Talks goes out to everyone that was identified as a church communicator, a church liaison, the church email address, the church pastor, and anybody else that said, hey, I'd like to get those too. So the church communicator, if they're participating in, let's say, Tuesday Talks, which is more of a communication liaison platform, but not excluding the church communicator, if they're participating, they're also getting the information. The difference is the church communicator is not tasked with filtering that information out. It's good for them to attend, because that's another person that's kind of with the antenna up, seeing what's coming up, what do I need to be focusing on, is there some new resource out there that I could be utilizing? So the liaison, at however it works at your church, I mean, some churches, bigger churches, are super busy, and the liaison might be communicating with the communicator on a daily basis, a weekly basis. Other churches are smaller and don't have a lot going on, so they might just need to do a once a month check-in to make sure everything's ready and you've got everything. And it's between the church communicator and the liaison to coordinate that. How much information, do I need to get? And I think it would be a great idea to start out more frequently and then decide, like, okay, maybe we don't need to visit so often, especially because as the communicator, I also get the Tuesday Talks email. But if you're one of the communicators that, your sole purpose, let's say you're a volunteer at your church and your one responsibility is to create the newsletter for your church on a monthly basis, the PDF and email maybe, then maybe you don't need to check in on a weekly basis or daily basis with the liaison, or the liaison doesn't need to check in with you that often. It could just be forwarding an email with, just the highlights of these are the pieces that I think for our church make a lot of sense, and maybe you might want to think about putting them in the newsletter or something like that. It's hard to really say exactly what you should do because it's so different for every church. Betty says, I'm the person getting information out to people in the church. I just want to know when this other person, who we do not have yet, gets information to me. So you'll still, Betty, if you're still participating in Tuesday Talks, you're still going to be getting information. We're not going to, it would be up to you to decide, I don't want to, now that we have a liaison, I don't need to spend time on this part. I'm busy with my other stuff. The liaison is doing a good job of keeping me informed. So at this point now I can kind of check out and rely on the liaison to get this information to me. So that's how that would work. Go ahead, Sherry.
Okay. I think it gets to be a little bit confusing when we're talking about communication liaison and local church communicator. Because we're the local church communication liaison, the terminology is getting confused a little bit, I think. The main purpose of this is that, there are those folks that are within each of the churches that they handle the newsletter. You as the communicator within the church, and I'm guessing the folks that are on here are that, you're doing the newsletter, you're handling a myriad of things within the church and helping the pastors get the information out. Pastors also receive information from the conference, and it's a large amount of information. And potentially there are things within that. This position is meant to help the pastor from the aspect of, here are the things that came from the conference. And the liaison would be looking at all of that, deciding, what, I want to make sure that my pastor knows about this thing, or that my SBRC group knows about this thing that I see in this information coming from the conference, where it has more to do with outside of the church and the information coming into the church from the outside. and potentially information within the church that may need to go to the conference if there's something enormous that's going on at the church that the conference should know about. So as the person doing the local newsletter, you've got a lot of stuff on your plate to begin with anyway. So ideally, if there were enough people, and that's different, obviously, I know that within many churches, if they're really small, it may be the same person as Jim is, where you're handling that for the time being. But as people get used to this particular role within the church, it can be a volunteer. It doesn't even have to be a paid person, someone that can take the time to read the information coming from the conference, to get the emails, to get all the information coming from the conference. So if there's something really big, they're the first line of defense, if you will, that they get the information coming from there. It's meant to help the pastors. It's meant to help the local church communicators that are doing newsletters and so forth and all of that. You may or may not have someone that's doing social media. Right now, if you're doing the newsletter, social media may not be your role. It may be, it's less, like I said, it's different in each church. So that liaison may actually be an assistance from that aspect, that watches social media and watches posts that are on there, puts something out on Instagram or on YouTube and helps from that aspect. So it's more the person communicating outside of the church, but being that rock that's there that can be the person in between. So it's a lot of verbiage. It sounds like, I'd like to get it down to something a little bit easier to call it that. But our idea was this, that we know in some of the surveys and information that we've taken on the Communication Commission, that there are times that information drops through the cracks, not because somebody's wanting to, but we all get inundated with a lot of information. So we put our heads together and looking at, so what can we do to be able to identify how to be able to help the churches and the pastors and the local church communicators, publishers, or whatever you're called, to be able to do that. Conversely, there are people within the conference that need to communicate with the church, and a lot of times it just keeps ending up in the pastor's lap over and over and over again, because they don't know who else to talk with there, and it's not a position that's been registered on the information and a general or a charge conference. So this helps us create a position, a person that is listed in the charge conference as the individual that Carla Whitmire can send something to take that information and disperse it wherever it needs to be within that church. So it gives the conference a solid person to do that with, rather than trying to guess at who should get the information. So it helps both sides. That's why it's the roundabout communication visual that you've got on that description, is that it's a way to be able to help the churches, but it also helps the conference to do this, and hopefully helps take some of the information off the pastor's lap. Granted, I know that pastors also try to look at everything and try to keep up on everything and watch all that. And that's not to prevent them from doing that, certainly. But hopefully this becomes a pastor sidekick of someone that can, be the team member that is paying attention to those things, to be able to say, especially, look at it right now during Christmas time, how busy pastors are during this, during Easter and all of those things. So if you've got someone that's really keeping an eye out specifically for something that may be coming from the conference that is pertinent to that pastor or to the congregation, that's their eye and their ear to the conference that can go back to the pastor and say, hey, did you see these two things? So it is a little confusing up front, and it is a new position that we're asking. But again, it can be, there may be a volunteer in your church that this looks like a fun thing for them to do. It's not like something they have to do 24/7. It can be something that they check in once a day during their lunch hour while they're working and looking at what's coming from the conference. So it could be someone that is just that, or somebody that happens to be somebody that really likes watching what's going on at the conference, but they're a volunteer in your church. So I didn't want to confuse it any further. Christina does a great job in explaining something like that, but it is new. What we want to be able to do as the commission is to be your resource, then whoever gets decided within that church, if you've got a question about something, contact the commission. If you need help and training and looking at how can we help you as the church be able to develop your liaison position, whether it's volunteer or paid, let us help you with that. Let us do some training with that person to start showing them information that's coming from the conference back to the church. And, the pastors can be a part of that as well. Let them be able to say, well, this is a piece that I typically handle, so they don't really need to do that. So we can do training as well along the way. Betty, you look like you have a question. Oh, okay. I didn't want to miss you. So I hope that helps a little bit. Jim?
I just had one comment. We were discussing this obviously in our charge conference, and I was trying to promote the fact that we have 3 or 4 people who work in the church office as volunteers, and they are probably better church communicators because they're on the firing line, let's put it that way. And that immediately got shot down because they knew I had been doing work with conference, so I got appointed as the liaison. But I really would like to get these local people involved more, and I will be working towards that. So
I think that's an outstanding idea. And certainly because you sit on the commission as well, you have a more in-depth understanding of what all this is. So mentoring someone into that position is fantastic because you do understand where we're going with that. So I think it's important. That's why I want to offer the commission as a mentoring committee for any of you that we can help with that. But that is what Jim I knew was going to do. That is like looking at people, take a look around your church and people like that talk with your pastor about this and maybe put your heads together and think maybe there's maybe 2 or 3 people there that potentially maybe they want to go through the training, and that may eliminate 2 of them to decide, you know what? Yeah, I don't want to do that.
yeah,
So let us help you from a training aspect, from an information aspect in looking at this. And we're going to work our way through that this year. So even if somebody gets named right now, they may be they may be the person that is going to be the mentor and help that liaison throughout this year so that they get more established with it. That's
just one question, one side to that. I mentioned that we needed church, obviously, to include the church communicators. But the one lady spoke up right away and she says, well, what I do is just gossip. And there, no, we had to examine that. I said, it's communicating. I said, there's going to be constraints. You don't want to put anything that's privacy issues out anywhere. But I said, you are communicating and letting the church know what's going on. Oh, okay. I don't think she thought of it that way.
See, that's perfect. Jim, you were there to be able to answer that question for her then. And that's the guidance that we need to work with, over the next year to help people look at how they can be the best in their church, before their church and for their pastoral staff and all of that, be able to help with that. So it's a journey. It's a project as we get it on track with all of this, and ultimately, I mean, if you took a scenario of, remember a couple of years ago when all of that was going on within the conference about potential church splitting and different models of that and all of that, that's a wealth of information. And sometimes it's hard to digest, for the average person sitting in the pew. So the folks at the church, the pastor has a huge role in that respect, communicating that to everybody in the church then, and people talking about it on staff. So what if there's that liaison person that can take all of the information from the conference on that, distill it, talk with the pastor and work with the staff to be able to help from that aspect, then to be able to take as much information in as they can. So, you imagine being a pastor and trying to look at all that, get the sermon ready and think about all they need to, and then go visit somebody in the hospital. It's too many things, they're human beings too. So so mentoring is a huge part of this, I think.
Amen. Thank you, guys. So I hope that helps to clarify some of the differences between the liaison and the communicator, and why it's important to find somebody else that is not the communicator, that is not the pastor, to take on this liaison position. I'm sure there's other questions and concerns that might be rising now or as you talk about it amongst your church leadership, to see who might be a good fit for that position. Don't feel like you have to answer it or guess at the answer. Reach out to us. The Commission on Communication is going to be having some trainings down the road, but email your question now. That might be a really good help for what we need to put into this training about the communication liaison. So, don't be shy. Send us some questions or thoughts, concerns, whatever. Send it via email to communications@dscumc.org. I'll be sure to get that information to the Commission on a timely basis and get you an answer. All right. Okay, next item that I want to share with you all is, let's see, oh yes, about publishing local church news, events, requests for items, job offers, or job openings, I guess. I get emails once in a while, and so does the district, when a church has whatever. I mean, it could be some special concert that they're hosting, and it could be a need that they have. Like one that we just got recently was large print hymnals, I think. They were wondering if anybody had any to share. This was from a smaller church. I'm going to share my screen again. So first what I'm going to do is show you what we can do. I think you're supposed to do like a positive sandwich and say what we can do, what we can't do, and then finish up with something good again. So that's what I'm going to try to do here. So what we can do is at the conference level, we can publish your local church job openings. If you need something, like there's the Hymnals one, if you're maybe selling something, and this is stuff that would be relevant to other churches, to other Desert Southwest Conference church communities. You'll notice there's the Justa is hiring one there. And yeah, there's your bookkeeper job. So we've got items that people are either getting rid of or need, and then there's jobs as well. This is all linked in our classifieds. This is what this is that we're looking at, is the classifieds page. On occasion, our district newsletters are able to publish some of these, even if it's just the title with a link to the actual job posting. Let's click on this one. There you go. So there's a lot more information than what you see. So we're able to put that stuff on the conference website. We try to keep it to only the most recent items. So like up to, see, like this one's already been filled. I need to take this one down. It should be no older than 30 days. However, sometimes whether it's items like this or job openings, they might be open for a lot longer. So they stay longer. And like I said, we try to get in here once in a while and remove old jobs. I haven't done that lately personally, which is why this one's there. This one falls under my responsibility. All right, so that's what we can do. What we can't do is publish things like, in the conference newsletter or on the conference website are things like, this church is hosting a special concert or a book study, or I always refer to the UMWT because that's one of my favorite events. and it's a very common event. A lot of churches host UMWTs. I think it's the Red Hat Tea or things like that. And it's something worthwhile that anybody can go to. So you would think, yes, let's share this through the whole conference. Let's share this in the news. Let's tell everybody to invite their neighbors and their friends and their family. Yes and no. Yes, that's a great idea for what you should do within your community. But no, we can't really publish that in conference or district news because our other churches are doing the same thing. So they're not really your target audience. If we publish it, we're just creating more noise or more links that are going to bury the other items that are not already happening at their church. So we don't publish things like that. However, if there is something like, thank you, Chris, for the note. Sorry. If there is an event that is so unique, so like maybe there's a major headliner that's coming to your church, you have to ask yourself, would somebody, let's say if your church is in Tucson, would somebody from Las Vegas fly down for this event? Is it that critical, like for conference wide? Or if it's a church in Phoenix that's hosting an event, that, would somebody in, okay, so first of all, sorry, I skipped over myself. So if it's not something like that's from anywhere in the conference that somebody would fly into town to be able to participate or to attend, then that's one for sure way to know I can't publish that in conference news, no matter how unique it is. It's not really going to be conference-wide news. But it might be something that your area might travel to, drive over to. So that's where it becomes more district news, maybe. So then you would have to ask, is this so unique, so attention-grabbing that my church in Glendale would attract people from Chandler to drive over? If the answer is yes, then you could go ahead and submit it for district news sharing, because then it's all those churches in your district that really could drive over and participate. So that's one of the pieces that I wanted to share with you of what we can and can't. Then on the flip side, so this is my one more positive, finishing up my sandwich here, is although we can't share these things on conference news or in the conference website, if you send me a link to where you've published it on social media, I could, if time allowing, I could share it through conference social media, or like it, or things like that, so that our followers see the information. Again, unless you're offering the event via Zoom, I mean, there's people from across the country that are following Desert Southwest Conference. That sounded super into ourselves, but there are some people that maybe lived here and moved, and they still want to know what's going on with their friends. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know, but I can't say that people would fly over, but maybe they would connect via Zoom. Maybe, I don't know what the situation might be, but that's one thing that we can also do, is share your news via social media. I can't, excuse me, if you were to send me stuff every single day, like, well, and here's a reminder of it, and here's another piece about it, like, I can't do that. Like, there's other news that needs to go out, and I don't want it to be all about any one particular church. But I do want to try to do something to help support your event and help spread the word. So I could, at least one time on social media, share something about whatever event that's going on, especially if it's unique. If it's just the UMW Tea Party or the church rummage sale, I might recommend the district Facebook share your church's rummage sale information, but that's something I probably wouldn't be able to share through the conference news. So think about it that way as far as who the target audience is. It's not just about getting the information out there, it's getting it out there to the right people. Okay. So any questions about that? All right. Then that's pretty much it for the discussion. So I'm going to share my screen one more time just to highlight the other items in case there's any questions about it. And I can't see your video right now, so if you have questions or anything, please unmute yourself so that I can hear that you've got a question. Okay, so this event, one of these already happened. It was yesterday at noon. It was a great event, very interesting. I found out some things about the difference between missions group at a church and a church and society group at a church, where missions sees the need and they do what they can to fill that need, whether it's hunger or homelessness, whatever. They do what they can to help meet that need. But a church and society group eliminates it. So that's where they're more involved in getting legislation out there and other things like that to deal with justice issues in a different way, to get rid of it altogether. That's their purpose. So for some churches, I understand they're saying, no, we already have a missions team, but no, we don't do anything in, there was like this whole list it's a great webinar to attend to better understand the difference between a missions team and a church and society team, and why your church should consider having one. Also, they address stuff like why, let's see, there was something about, well, as soon as you start talking about social issues, then that automatically targets your church or the speaker as being from one side or another, conservative versus the other one. Sorry, I'm blanking right now. But anyway, they address all of this at the webinar. It was a great session, and the next one is on Thursday, December 9th at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Share this information if you are the church liaison. Share it with your missions team, share it with your church council, with your lay leader, share it with your pastor to see who might be interested in this. Put it in your newsletter, why not, if you can, or send a congregational email about it if you can. I think it's going to be another great session, and we are going to record them both and end up combining them for like a training video later down the road. But it's nothing like attending live. All right, then, oh yeah, this is one resource that was shared during the webinar. There's a whole list of documents, see there, and this last one was one of the items that came up from one of the participants. So that's brand new information. You might want to share that with your pastor. It's some workshops that are hosted by another conference. It's the Great Plains United Methodist Conference, and these workshops are just $10. So they're happening in January and February. Check it out. All right, the next workshop, it's just a reminder, it's still there. You can still register for it. I'm going to be highlighting this every week until it actually happens, only for the reason that I know a lot of times we put things on hold, or like, oh, okay, I've got plenty of time, I don't need to worry about it right now. And then when you're ready to register, oh my gosh, where did that link go? So that's why I'm sharing this again, just so you have it at the ready. Here's a big one. I think this one's something that you'll want to share in your church newsletter, or with your, if you have a young adult ministry. It's a scholarship that's coming up, and you have to apply before May 30th. So you can visit the campus ministry website. The first article explains it, and then here's where the scholarship is linked, dscumc.org/campus-ministry. Okay, and then the other item that I wanted to bring up is the Western Jurisdictions Course of Study. The 2022 winter and spring enrollment is now open, so you might want to share this if you have, people that are in the clergy track, that are, on the ordination track, that are, I don't know who else might want to do it. But yeah, take a look. And all of those items are going to be linked in the newsletter that you will receive later on today. Any questions? All right, guys, it's 10:44. Sorry, friends, not guys. You're not all guys. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you again next week.